All right, poetry journal patron. Everybody who publishes in the Brick Wall Review has to agree in advance that if a poem is printed in one of its regular issues, the magazine also has the right to reprint it without monetary compensation in its annual anthology. Okay, so I was like, all right, so anybody that gets published in the Brick Wall, they have to agree in advance that we can actually reprint it again and not have to pay them. That's what we're saying so far. Cool. The Brick Wall Review makes enough money from sales of its anthologies to cover most operating expenses. So we're saying, like, so we get most of our operating expenses, are we able to cover it from the money from this thing? So if your magazine also published an anthology of poems first printed in your magazine, you could depend less on donations. After all, most poems published in your magazine are very similar to those published in the Brick Wall Review. All right, so what's our conclusion here, Mohib?
It's so if your magazine also published an anthology of poems first printed.
Yeah. Oh. And what's our reasoning for that?
It's saying that, so after all, most poems published in the magazine are similar.
Yeah, so this is like me saying, like, hey Alyssa, my poems are like your poems, so I'm gonna make as much money on my magazine as you are on your magazine. Is that the valid argument, Mohib?
No, because like there could be like different distinctions, I guess.
Yeah, like, does my magazine have to be as good as the Brick Wall Review?
No.
That was kind of what I predicted, was like, what if my magazine doesn't sell as many as yours does? Like, what if I'm not selling as much?
Yeah, or so I was like, my poems might be amazing, I just haven't been, what is that called, established yet. But and so that was my prediction. Did you have a prediction here, Mohib?
No, honestly, like I didn't really understand stimulus as much, and I think the reason why is because I was having like trouble figuring out the point of views and different, like,
yes.
Yeah, so I couldn't really have a proper prediction because of that.
Do you feel like you understand the stimulus now?
Like I see like I still have the issue with the different perspectives, but I kind of understand like what the issue is a bit.
So yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And this one's tough. So this one back here is kind of backgroundy. So we're saying, like, hey, everyone that gets published in this place has to agree that if we reprint their poem or their whatever, their poem again, we don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
And we make enough money off of selling these to cover our operating expenses. So it's like these people are so good that they don't even have to worry about that or whatever. So if we also publish these poems, if your magazine also published an anthology of poems first printed in your magazine, if we would sell these poems, as another item or whatever, we would have to depend less on donations because our poems are very similar to this magazine. So if I'm creating my magazine, I could take all the poems out of it, not have to pay people for writing them, and just sell it as a book. And I could have to depend less on magazines. Like, what are they assuming that's going to happen to my book?
Like 100%, whatever happened to Brick Wall Review is gonna be, the result is gonna be for yours as well.
Similar, yeah. Like, I'm gonna make money off of this thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna buy my book of poems? Like,
yeah.
You can say no. He's like, no, I'm not. Yeah, exactly. But maybe this other poem we would. So what answer choices were you between here?
So wait, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So he's saying, like, because this is happening, it's going to happen for you because it's happening for me. Essentially, is what he's saying.
Essentially, yeah, exactly. They're saying, like, well, hey, they did this and were successful, and you also have that thing, so therefore you should be successful too.
Okay.
Well, one, it's like, I'm not the New York Times. Like, they can probably sell a book a lot faster than Nicole Steiner can sell a book of poetry. But challenge accepted. I'm to go write some poems now. All right, so what answer choices were you between?
I think I put, sorry.
No, go ahead, it's all good.
I think I put B on this one.
All right, so many of the poets, okay, so we're weakening it. And so we want to weaken the idea that we don't, if we made this book of poems, we wouldn't have to depend less on donations. And so we're saying that many of the poets whose works appear in the Brick Wall Review have had several poems rejected by other people. So how does that weaken that we don't have that, pretty much weaken that my magazine isn't going, or my book isn't going to sell enough for me to depend less on donations? What was your thought process here?
It's a good question.
Like what I think your thought process was is like you're saying like, well, hey, many of their poets maybe aren't that great either. So your poetry might be okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to like break the comparison up, like break this, like
Yeah,
like
okay.
I thought that did a good, you know, like there's no association.
True. But does it matter that they like, this is like saying like, well, many of Nicole's students got rejected by some T14 schools. Well, just because if you got into like 2 T14 schools, that's amazing. T14 law school, that's amazing, right? And so we don't really know that them getting rejected by several publications either necessarily, like maybe it's like really hard. And so the fact that you make it into any of these actually makes you a good poet as well. What else did we have here? Mohib, what did you say?
So I was between A and C, but I think A is just going against the premise, no?
Neither the Brick Wall Review nor the other magazine under discussion depends on donations. Yeah, that goes, yeah, for one, it goes against premise because they're saying that we don't depend on donations to cover most operating expenses. And we're saying that this is going to happen instead, so we could depend less on donations. And it's like, well, yeah, going against a premise.
Yeah.
And then you said between C?
C.
So the only compensation poets receive for publishing in the regular issue of the magazine under discussion are free copies of the issue in which their poems appear. How does that work?
I don't know. I was just because I didn't really understand the stimulus as much, so I was just trying to like think of like just pick a strong answer choice and like something that like is out of the it's like a new information that I just bring in, but I guess it doesn't make sense.
I actually crossed out C.
Okay, why did you cross it off, Alyssa?
Because it talked about the compensation that the poets receive. And I felt like whether they get compensated or not didn't really affect if my magazine is going to be as successful as the Brick Wall.
Yeah, perfect. Because like the only compensation, yeah, it's saying like that, yeah, because it's all about me being able to sell my book of or my magazine of poems and making money off of it. That's all we care about. All right, why is D wrong, Tyler?
That is also going against the premise, I think.
Yeah, and just because, and whether or not they depend on it, yeah, it goes actually, yeah, that's just against the premise.
Wait, how is it? Wait, because I was between D and E.
So it's saying that the Brick Wall depends on donations to cover most of the operating expenses, and so we say that actually maybe it doesn't go against the premise.
Wait, yeah, because that's why I was
well, the group depends on donations to cover.
Well, it says make enough money from sales of its anthologies to cover most operating expenses.
Yeah, I see that now.
All right, and then lastly, E says, sorry, I have to clear this, I can't see. The Brick Wall's annual poetry anthology always contains a number of poems by famous poets, not published in the regular issues of the magazine. This is an example where there's not a ton of weekend questions, where this literally just brings in a new random fact that is influential, where they're saying, yeah, the reason that the New York Times can sell all these poems is because they have like Maya Angelou in here that people want to read.
I know this is an excuse, but Alyssa, what did you say the demon said about this question?
Oh, so he asked me about this, and I struggled with it. He struggled with it. It's level 5 out of 5, and Nathan wrote, "I don't love this question. Please don't worry about it too much. There's other questions that you can learn from." And so it's like, when Nathan says he hates it, and to kind of move on, it's a bad question.
Yeah, it's one that it's not fixing a flaw. It's just well, it goes back to Tyler, kind of your prediction though of like differentiating between the two. So you were close. You were feeling it out.
Yeah, I know, but like I think I got caught up in the compensation part. Like I thought, well, that was the main point, and like this brought in. I didn't cross off E because I didn't love it, but I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just thought it was a random sentence, which it was.
No, it is. This is like bringing in an outside, like a random premise.
But I do see how it weakens it, because it's giving another reason as to why they're making.
Why they make so much money off of this book.
Right.
I thought when I looked at Manhattan Prep, like the explanation of it in there, it said that it doesn't like it not published in the regular issues was like the big point of that that like answer.
Like they bring in even more. They're not just reselling old poems. They also publish new poems as well. Excellent. This one, this is a level 5. I think what makes the harder strengthen and weaken questions, the harder ones, more difficult, is that they're actually more mild answers. Like the answers are more mild. They're not as obvious, this is an example of that.